The third factor, next slide please. The third factor is of course ideology, and there's a huge debate amongst the academics about the role and importance of ideology. Some people are overrating it a little bit, but in order to illustrate why ideology is important, I want to give you a brief example, which is from a Western country in fact. Next slide please. This is Tara Nickel, who was one of the co-conspirators in the bombing in Oklahoma in 1995, which killed 168 people. And I found a good description of him in a book about the Oklahoma bombings. Next slide, please. Where it started out talking about him, saying basically he was a failure. He was someone who in his mid-30s had not accomplished anything in his life. He hadn't finished his education. He had never been able to hold on to a job. He had never been able to hold on to a relationship. And by his mid-30s, he was pretty down and depressed. And then something happens. According to the Washington Post, he fell increasingly under the influence of these far-right neo-Nazi groups. Like the white supremacist Aryan nations. And here's the key point. By hanging out with these groups, he realizes the following. The philosophy of these groups helped him understand his troubles. They were the government's fault. So suddenly, he goes from someone who is deeply depressed about himself, about the state of his life, the fact that he hadn't accomplished anything in his life. He absorbs the ideology of this group, and suddenly he thinks, wow, there's a great conspiracy against me. The fact that I haven't accomplished anything isn't my fault, it is the government's fault. And he goes from zero to hero in his own mind within a very short period of time. He goes from someone who is depressed and feels like a loser to someone who feels like he has to be a freedom fighter for the rights of people like himself. And that's the important point about ideology. It channels a personal grievance into a political project. It transforms something into a political cause that may have been completely personal or individual. And that's why ideologies in some cases can be important. Finally,